Hi everyone, this is Courtney Maccia, and for my data collection project, I'm doing existing documents, records, and artifacts. So these are pretty much exactly what they sound like. They are documents, records, and artifacts that have been already collected and done with the students or with the school. So for students, this can be written or visual sources of data. These can include attendance, discipline records, and previous grades. For current academics, it could be curriculum, their textbooks, or the manipulatives used in the classroom. And finally, it can be test scores and then cumulative folders or those portfolio folders a lot of teachers will put together for the students. If you're doing research on a school, these can be attendance, graduation, and retention rates, articles about the school that have been published in local newspapers, faculty of board or Board of Ed meeting minutes, and the standardized test scores for the school. These standardized test scores can be used as looking at different demographics for whatever helps your data research. So what makes this really unique is that the data already exists. It's not something that the teacher is going to have to admit in the class. So it's something that they can pull from other places. This is really nice because I know as a classroom teacher, it's hard to add in something extra or something that feels like extra to collect data on the students. So for this one, it's something that they've already done or you already have about the students. You don't need to add that extra layer in. It is also unique because it's going to be collected by the teacher outside of the classroom time. Teachers are going to have to go down to the office or possibly go on to the school website or things along those lines during their prep times or outside of the normal teaching day to collect this data as opposed to teachers who get to have the data collected while the students are inside of the classroom. So it's a qualitative data collection. It's data collected through experiences and not through numbers. Although it might seem like there's a lot of numbers included in things like their absentee rates and things along those lines, it is technically a qualitative data collection. So the best time to use it is when a researcher needs data that already exists, when a researcher is researching why something is the way it is, or when researching a correlation between two things. There was a really great example in our text about looking at the correlation between student absences, the reason for these absences, and their discipline records. So the researcher kind of looked at all three of those things to see if students being absent and the reason for these absences was affecting their discipline records inside of the school. So there are obviously some strengths and some weaknesses to go along with this. So a strength is that it's already prepared for you. Like I said earlier, it's not something that you're going to have to add into your school day with the students. It's not going to be that extra thing that stresses a teacher out with collecting data. And it gives historical insight, meaning that you can see the trends that have been happening with your students throughout the course of their schooling or even the trends within a school itself to see what might be affecting other things. And it really gives you a lot of background information on both your students and the school in which you're working in. Some weaknesses is that it's not given during the class time. So I know a lot of the times teachers are worrisome or they're uh, a little bit worried to look at data that wasn't administered by themselves because they might not know exactly what it looks like or how it was given to the students. So I can see this being an issue, especially when you're looking at student work from previous years, seeing as to how was that information given and how was that data collected might have a little bit of a issue for some teachers. Another thing is that it doesn't show where the child is now academically. Since these are documents and records that have been prepared before, so maybe it was in the previous school year, maybe it was something about the school from the previous school year, or it's things that have been done earlier in the school year that you're in right then. It's not really showing how the student is performing academically at that moment. It's giving you previous examples, but not current examples. So some of the concerns that I have about this one is that, as stated earlier, it doesn't really show how the students are doing currently. It's a look back into how they've been doing in the past historically, but it still is a very helpful piece of data to see how they were doing before they got to you or even earlier in the year. But again, it doesn't show you how they are doing currently. You'd have to do some backup uh, testing to see if things have changed. There's also a lot of data to sift through, and it can be hard to decide what to use. So if you remember on the second slide of this presentation, I listed a number of different things that a teacher can use to be considered this type of data. It can be difficult to decide which ones are the ones you want to use for your research, and there can be a lot of information on all of these, especially if you're looking at whole school information, considering schools can have so many students in every grade. I know the school that I'm in right now has about 700 students, so if I were to be looking at the entire school's data on absences, it would be a little bit overwhelming. In the text, they suggest having a really sought out plan of how you're going to organize the data. He had a chart for the study that I discussed earlier, talking about absences, reason for absences, and then student discipline records. So having that plan ahead of time can really bring down the anxiety of having to look through all this data and can make it really worth your while to do artifacts, documents, and records. If you have any questions, please feel free to write them in the discussion board. I can't wait to watch your videos and learn some more things about different types of data collection.